Hey, what's up guys? It's your good friend Airsoftman819 back again with another video. The channel update video I did was a few months ago, and I figured I've been getting kind of long in the tooth because I know I made some promises in that video that I was going to be making content. And that's still true, and today is going to be my first actual video being back. And today's video is going to be on the do's and don'ts of cassette collecting, and this video is also going to be giving some information to people that are just wanting to get into cassette collecting, both collecting cassette albums and cassette machines. So before I get into that, I want to give you guys a little bit of my backstory as far as my own history with cassettes, because I appear to be somebody who might be a little too young to actually know what cassettes are, but I do, and there is a reason. So, back in the early 2000s when I was a kid, primarily what people were using to listen to music were CDs and MP3s. MP3s kind of came later, but it was CDs pretty much dominated the portable music market when I was a kid in school. You know, I'm talking elementary school, you know, 1st through 5th grade, stuff like that. And obviously, we were still in the end of the cassette era. You know, cassette albums were still being sold, but mostly they were looked at as kind of an older technology. It's kind of like how we look at DVDs now. Everybody still kind of uses DVDs now, but they also see them as kind of an older technology. And that's kind of how cassettes were when I was a kid. I really wanted a music, because I saw, you know, a lot of my friends would have, you know, MP3 players, or the rich kids had iPods, and some people had MP3 players, some people had iPods, some people had CD players, but I wanted something I could listen to music on. So I told my dad, I was like, I want something portable I can listen to music on. And a little bit of my own backstory, I did grow up poor for the most part. I mean, I did have family members in my family that had money, but my parents really were pretty much poor. I mean, we were lower middle class, mostly on the poverty level most of the time. So my dad gets me a cassette Walkman, a Sony Walkman actually. And that's what I listened to music on when I was a kid. And, you know, I have very fond memories of it, to be honest. It always worked. It always sounded good. It was always there when I needed it. It was decently portable. The batteries lasted a long time, and I was happy with it. It even had an AM/FM radio built in if, you know, I ran out of music on my cassettes to listen to. So, very fond memories as a kid. And I kind of forgot about cassettes for a long time. And I had been hearing recently over the years, just the past few years, about how badly they sounded and how they were terrible technology and the people were glad that they were gone. And I'm just like, I don't really remember it that way. You know, maybe I'm mistaken, but I fondly remembered cassettes. You know, I always liked them. So I thought, you know, maybe it was me. Maybe they were worse than I thought. So I made it a point to buy a cassette player and listen to it. So I went on eBay and found a cheaper cassette player for $30, $40, and I bought it. I started listening to some of the old cassette albums I had, and, you know, they sounded fine. They sounded great to me. And that's when I started to get into the thing where I just didn't really understand where people were coming from, you know. They said, oh, they're terrible, you know, they sound bad, they're real staticky, you know, the machines eat the tapes, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I never had any experiences like that. So I started doing more research, and I came across a video, Cassettes Better Than You Remember by Techmoan. And I watched that video and I said, okay, there is the source. That is why everybody has bad memories of cassettes. And the reason a lot of people have bad memories of cassettes is because a lot of the equipment that we had as kids was just garbage. You know, the boom boxes, the little cheap Chinese Walkman knockoffs. A lot of the stuff that people grew up with that they remember as kids was just bad quality stuff. And when you're dealing with analog equipment like a cassette, you have to have a good quality machine to play it in. Okay, in the modern digital era, you can have a cheap plastic box from China and it still sounds good because the sound is digital. With an analog signal, it is physically taking a signal off of that tape and amplifying it. It's a physical thing that is happening. It's not digital. And because of that, with cassettes and vinyls, because I'm not leaving vinyls out of this completely, I might do a separate video on vinyls. But with analog forms of media like vinyls, cassettes, even CDs, CDs are more digital than analog, but you get the point. When you have physical media, the equipment plays a much bigger role. And the best advice I can give people who are wanting to get into cassettes, because they're enjoyable, they're fun, you know, collecting the albums, you know, restoring the machines, fixing the machines, getting them working again, is something that I take a lot of pleasure in, and that's why I got into it. You know, that first cassette player I bought on eBay had problems, and I had to fix it. And, you know, I relatively enjoyed myself fixing it, so I figured, well, I'll just get into this and see where it takes me. So I started buying, you know, cheaper, broken machines on eBay, you know, whether it was tape recorders, boom boxes, tape decks, whatever I could get my hands on for cheap, I'd just buy it and fix it up just as a hobby. And I've gotten to the point where it's kind of a problem. I've started collecting machines now. Now I have a whole collection of cassette players, and I have a whole huge collection of albums, and I just have a blast doing it. And it's something I've been into off and on the past few years, but I never really thought to bring it to YouTube. But in this recent COVID-19 YouTube renaissance that we're seeing, my YouTube has been exploding in views, and I haven't been doing anything on here. And I've honestly been at a loss for ideas as to what people want to see on here. So I got the bright idea to bring my cassette hobby to my YouTube channel. So hopefully you guys enjoy the series of videos. I'm going to do a few just to start off, including this one, just to see what people think and how people react, and we'll, you know, go from there. So there's a lot of different cassette machines out there you can get. I'm going to be talking on machines first before we get to tapes, because tapes are important, but not as much as the machines in this case, if you're wanting something that sounds good. The cassette had a very, very long lifespan, starting in the mid-'60s all the way to the early 2000s. So you're talking about a huge span of time, and the technology changed so drastically over that time span that depending on what era you're looking at, you can expect different things. You know, I started off collecting machines from the early cassette era, very basic, very old analog machines that had very few parts. And as time has gone on, I've progressed to getting more, you know, ambitious with working on, you know, big, you know, dual deck boom boxes and actual stereo cassette decks and things that are a little more complicated. And that's honestly, if you're going to delve into it as deeply as I did, that's how I would recommend you start. Get some real cheap, basic, you know, late 60s, early 70s stuff. And because it doesn't require a lot of work to fix, because there's not a lot of moving parts, and just start from there. You know, because if you buy a, you know, $200-300 dual deck collectible boom box that you need to restore, and you try to work on it and you know nothing about them, you're going to end up messing it up worse than it was when you got it. So it's best to start small. That is my best piece of advice with cassettes, is start small. Do not just jump off the diving board, dip your toes in first, because some of these machines have a lot of moving parts, and the engineers were not very forgiving in how they design them, and they make them very difficult to repair. So I have brought out two examples from my own personal collection to show you guys kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, early cassette era to more modern. Not quite modern, but semi-modern. So the first machine I have here for us to look at, and I don't have a tripod or anything, I have a little mini tripod on my desk. I need to get better camera equipment because, you know, during my year-long hiatus, I got rid of a lot of my equipment. But this right here is about as basic as you can get as far as a cassette machine is concerned. This is the first cassette machine ever commercially released. I mean, first consumer machine ever released, not whatever I just said. This is the first consumer available cassette machine ever. This is the Philips 3300. There we go. Philips 3300. This one is actually rebranded by Wollensack, which was a U.S. company, I believe, 3M. But it is made in Holland, as it states right here. You could probably see that right where my finger is, made in Holland. So really high quality machine, really well made, but it's small, it doesn't have a lot of power, it doesn't get super loud, and it has only the most basic of features, because this machine was built in 1966. This is a very old machine. This machine is 54 years old. Still works. I actually bought it, and it really didn't need much work. I just had to clean it out on the inside, replace the belt, lube some things up, and it worked just fine. So, but you don't really get much. You get one speaker, you get a volume knob, or in this case, two volume knobs. One knob is for the record volume, and the other knob is for the volume for the actual speaker. And then you have your inputs for your microphone over here, and that's it. There is no headphone jack. There is no pause button. The tape does not automatically stop when it gets to the end, so you have to be sitting there waiting for it to get to the end of the tape to stop it. If not, it will snap your tape and break it. Just very, very basic. You get basically play, fast forward, or advance in this case, fast forward, and rewind, and record. You have a very small battery slash VU meter right here. You have a manual cassette door that you have to lift open yourself. There's no springs, there is no mechanism, it is just a flap. You lift this up, you manually place your cassette. I'll show you how to do that actually, because I have a cassette here. You manually insert your cassette, and you manually remove it. Very, very basic. If you're planning on listening to albums regularly and you want a decent quality sound and a decent amount of sound, this little single speaker machine is just not going to work for you. Not to mention, you can't even plug this into a wall. So you're stuck with C batteries, one speaker, no other features pretty much. So that's that. But having machines like that is nice because they're historical. The Philips 3300 became a pretty rare machine to find these days in working order. And I'm happy that I have one, even though I don't listen to it. I'm just happy to know that I have one that works. So, my second machine is much larger and might not fit into frame. This is an AWA CS200 boombox. This is a pretty much full-size, full-featured boombox. But it's not, one of those huge boomboxes that you can't even carry. This is a normal, average-sized, single-person portable boombox. This is one of the best-sounding boomboxes I own. It sounds fantastic in stereo. It sounds, honestly, just as clear as a CD or an MP3 to me. But with this machine, you have a lot more features. Go ahead and fold the handle down. On the top, you have your full set of buttons. So you have your pause. This does have a pause. Stop, eject. So no longer do you have that manual flap that you have to open on your own. You have an actual door that opens. Obviously, you have your fast forward, rewind, and record functions. Now, this is starting to introduce things that earlier machines did not have. Some earlier machines had this, but this is a tone control. This is basically adjusting between your bass and treble. This has a stereo mono mode, so if you have older cassettes that have maybe been recorded in mono, like on a tape recorder or something, you can set this to mono, or if you want to listen to the radio in mono, you can set this to mono. This has a 4-band radio. It has FM, AM, and 2 shortwave bands, so you can pick up quite a bit of radio stations, even radio stations in other countries. Just a very nice boombox. This also has built-in microphones. Unlike the other machine that you had to plug a microphone into, this one has a microphone on each side on the front. You have your tuning knob on the side. This is not a review of this, by the way. I will be doing a review of this more in depth, but due to my limited abilities on the camera, I will not consider this a review. But I have a cassette tape here. This is a Sebastian Bach classical music cassette. This is no longer copyrighted music. This is public domain. YouTube, listen to me. I swear to God, if you take my video down, I'm going to lose it because this is not copyrighted music. You know, when the musician's been dead for hundreds of years, it's hard to copyright it, you know. So, good luck. So let's listen to some Sebastian Bach because that's the only thing that YouTube will let us listen to, even though I would love to put one of my hip-hop cassettes in here. Okay, let's listen. Very full and high quality sound from an actual boombox. That is not the type of sound you would get from a small mono machine like the Philips I just showed you. So it all depends if you're a collector or a listener or both. Me, I fall under both. I listen to a lot of my cassette albums, but I also like to collect machines. So I have a lot of machines that cross eras. You know, I have machines dating all the way from the beginning all the way till towards the end. I've got some boomboxes from the late 80s. That boombox I just showed you, the AWA, was from the early 80s, 1982 to be specific. So even it's not very new. But it's a fun hobby. I would definitely recommend getting into it, especially if you're like me and you're into vintage stuff and you like to tinker. So, you know, if you're into old stuff, you like to tinker, and you like music, cassettes, you can't go wrong with them. But just know your boundaries. Do not just jump. Dip your toes, okay? And whether or not I make actual repair videos of me restoring these, I'm not sure. That's actually something I'm going to ask you guys. So, knowing that I want to start this series, what specifically do you guys want to see as far as cassettes are concerned? Do you want me to talk more about my albums? Do you want me to talk more about my machines? Do you want me to do reviews on my machines? Or would you rather see me restore them? Or would you rather see all of it? I'm not sure. I'm leaving that up to you guys. So make sure you leave a comment on this video and let me know what it is you want to see. Because I'm in a very unique position right now where I can probably make it happen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little informational video. I'm sorry it wasn't super professional, but I don't have a lot of equipment right now. Hopefully within the next couple months I can get some better camera equipment, some more up-to-date camera equipment because all of my stuff is getting old now. So I hope you guys enjoyed and stay tuned for my next video because it is coming.